Just a really quick one to talk about angle of elevation and depression. Now, you've all done angle of elevation and depression before, but it's surprising how many times in the test I see this done just slightly backwards. So let's take a look at some of the key mistakes that we might make when it comes to angles of elevation and depression. Angles of elevation, we usually do pretty well. Now remember that an angle of elevation, normally when you're doing a question like this, it seems to be a boat and a cliff. It could be an aeroplane and a person. It could be a person flying a kite. In any case, it's fairly predictable stuff. Now, when we look up to that cliff, remember that the angle of elevation, you start on a flat line and then you start looking up until you've got a line looking up at that cliff. That angle is our angle of elevation there. Now I might give that angle a value just so we can talk about it a little bit. Let's call that angle 30 degrees. Now that's elevation and that's really, really simple stuff. The thing that we do tend to stuff up with is angle of depression. Now if I tell you the angle of depression equals 30 degrees, what I often see in these sorts of questions is people getting really excited and putting it in here and saying 30 degrees. Now that's absolutely not the angle of depression. Remember that the angle of depression, in order to draw that, you need to draw a dotted line that is horizontal with the ground. Now the angle of depression is the angle between that dotted line and that line there. Now once you've got an angle of depression, you can use that within trigonometry by using complementary angles. If that's 30 degrees and this is a right angle, that means that this must be 60 degrees. You can also see that from our drawing, the angle of elevation is equal to the angle of depression. Now that's not an accident, that's because of something called the Z rule that you would have learnt a little while ago. Parallel lines, the ground, and this dotted line that we've drawn there, a transversal is going through them. You can see our Z rule here, angle, down, and here makes a Z. That angle of elevation is going to be equal to that angle of depression. You might find that information useful when you're doing modelling and problem solving questions.